Well, welcome everybody. We have Chris Tabish with us today, and I think this is great. It's after Christmas, it's before New Year's, and we've got a guy who's got a wonderful business background. But did you actually create the term Kaminiology, which you've titled your book and you've titled one of your two businesses?
Yeah, David, I actually did. I created, because I'm a stand-up comedian, to your point, I actually do business. And I thought, well, how do I combine these two words? I thought of, co-economics. It got to a weird place, but I ended up with Kaminiology. But yeah, you great job on the pronunciation, by the way. I've heard anything to, yeah.
Well, one thing that struck me, and maybe because I'm so old, but, I was like, did he come up with this term? So it's like, you get up in front of the audience, you say, okay, I have a book called Kaminiology, and it'll teach you, how to be awesome in business and connect people to your purpose. But let's see if anybody in the audience can say that really fast 3 times. Right. And I don't, because it just seems like one of those words that you'd trip over, but I haven't, I don't know.
I get up there and I say, you remember from college, your Kaminiology 101 course. It talks, yeah. So it is. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. So thanks for the second book title. I'll keep that in mind. Uh-oh, did I lose your audio?
Yeah, as I tried to move it behind so sorry, Jeff. Anyway, we'll pick it up.
But that was principle number 14 in Kaminiology 101.
Is that what it is? Yeah, actually, you taught me to do that beforehand. So it's okay. Maybe we leave it in, right? So I'm kind of curious. So you were on a corporate track, obviously, and looking at your background, you work for some tech titans, that type of thing. And then what happened? I mean, what made you make this shift to Kaminiology? And kind of, was that before Venture West, the other company you've co-founded, or after? And how did that all come into play?
Yeah, it's, I did work for very large tech companies, and I kind of, so sorry, I just saw Star Wars, so I'm going to use some analogies, but I felt like a beaten down stormtrooper, like, what are we doing? Why are we are we, looking around saying I'm pretty miserable. I don't really know my purpose. I see a lot of other people who aren't really joyful when they come to work. And I thought, boy, I have to do something. And, the thing about comedy is you actually have people that can listen, if you, and don't know your employee number, like a shrink would, they can trace you back. But it actually started off quite accidentally. I just loved comedy. I wanted to do comedy. It started off as a very joyful thing. And then over time, I found that lessons from comedy were actually very helpful and made me more effective and made me have a lot more fun in the corporate world. And so that was kind of, it wasn't intended to start out that way, but after doing stand-up comedy for numerous years, I sort of blended the two worlds together.
So I'm kind of curious. If I read your bio correctly, don't you have a wife and some kids?
Yes.
So what was the wife's response to that? Here you have, steady job, wonderful paycheck, great company, security. It's like, honey, I really want to go do stand-up comedy. But yeah, what was the response?
Well,
just go running, screaming out the door, or what?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm hoping she'll come back. It's been a few years. No, she actually was, because it started off as a hobby, right? I was still in my corporate world, and it started off as a hobby. And then it sort of gave me the courage to go out and hey, I can start my own consulting company. So I still live in the corporate world. I just have my consulting company. And as part of the consulting company, one of the things that we offer is Kaminiology, helping people find, a lighter way, helping people change through comedy, helping people punch up their material, helping people, work better as a team.
So you've got this consulting company, Venture West. Was that the first formal entity before you started the formal entity of Kaminiology?
Yeah. So I started the company, and then I had been actually kind of writing these things down as going through comedy, make sure to, just simple things like, hey, when you're on stage, for example, similar in business, and I'm sure you've gone through this, David, where it's like, okay, we want you to do this because upper management says so. And you're like, well, why? As an example, likewise on stage, if you get up on comedy and just on a comedy stage and just try to regurgitate material, it's not a raging success. I can tell you from experience, you need to know your why. And so my why is connecting with people and having fun. So I've been writing, to answer your question, I've been writing these things down and then sort of knitting this sort of book together. And then when we came up with a consulting organization, we decided to offer those as services.
Okay, so and the consulting organization overall, if I read it correctly, Venture West really helps when an organization needs transformation. They're kind of stuck. Did I read that correctly? What's the focus there? Is that
100%. So it's a transformation usually around, people, process, or technology. Well, it actually goes technology, process, and then people in like 100 font, right? It's always about, in my experience, about the people. You need to know all three, but yeah, so it's about if they're doing some sort of transformation, we come in and we're able to help lead that, help do change around that, help, implement technology around that. But boy, I'll tell you, if you can leverage comedy in that, boy, what a difference it makes.
But how do you do that? I mean, let's start by taking an easy one. Let's say you have somebody who actually can adapt to the comedy approach pretty well, but for whatever reason you determine you don't think they're connecting well enough. How do you tie in the comedy yet make it so it increases like engagement of employees or productivity or whatever, versus just some laughs and then somebody goes away and it's not a lasting impact?
Yeah, I think the best method that I've had is just to tell a good knock joke in the boardroom. It just really sets the tone, and that's actually thank you for seeing it. I think a lot of questions that I get is, hey, how do I tell a good joke in the in the critical meeting? I'm like, that's you probably don't want to go there, but it really is. I think kind of holding up the mirror in terms of example that I just gave is talking about, why you're here. And it's easier to see it when you're outside of your profession or when you can get outside of yourself, is to actually, hey, why are you here? Oh yeah, well, that guy in comedy, that's how that works. You need to actually know your why. Well, why am I here? What am I doing? Well, are you here to implement a software package, or are you here to make the salespeople more productive? Because if it's to make salespeople more productive, you can do that right now. You don't need to wait 6 months to implement the software to receive value. You can, hey, how's your day going? Hey, let's cancel this 2-hour meeting, and why don't I just send an email and save you 2 hours to go? Or things that you find out along the way when you're implementing something to say, hey, did you know that your process in Asia Pac is much more efficient than it is in North America? Things that you can do right away if you understand your why, as an example. So it's not actually the pop funny punchline, although we can get into that as well, but it's the underlying aspect that makes comedy successful, also makes business successful.
So my understanding so it's year end. I mean, this is a great time to talk about this, right? Because hopefully we just talked with our clients about daily disciplines, how you kind of get your focus each day on what's truly most important. But hopefully most leaders are taking this time, this 2 to 4 week period, end of year, start of new year, to assess, okay, 2019's gone, what went well, what didn't go well, and what am I going to do about it, versus, or are they stuck? You came from Star Wars movies, so, are they CP3, or are they just like, they're so busy, they're just staying in the same mode and going to the next thing? Are you called in then to kind of break that and say, oh, whoa, time out?
Absolutely. Yes. That's one of the things that we do. And just to talk specifically to one, so if I could give your listeners something, because you nailed it, people get caught in doing the same thing. And one of the things that we talk about is a concept called a creative 401k. And so people who are in the business world are familiar with the concept of a financial 401k. So when you start off, you save, I don't know, $500 a month, making up the number. And over time, that becomes your pillar. That becomes how you operate. And you invest, week after week, day after day, week after week, month after month. Pretty soon you have something that's going to support you and guide you. Well, the same thing from a creative perspective. If you're showing up, going to meeting after meeting, and you're doing what the boss is telling you what to do, well, there's not a lot of self-direction there. And so this creative 401k is all about, you mentioned this week is a good reflection time. Well, how about investing in that every single week or every single day? When I was writing Kaminiology, I woke up at 5 o'clock and I did writing every day. Boy, there's a lot of self-reflection in that, but people sort of lose the plot. If you're going to be a comedian, boy, you need to have material and you need to have it written and understand it. Well, the same thing in business.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It sounds like one of the things you're doing is you're kind of taking someone that's almost robotic, that is stuck. They're super busy, right? I mean, the people you're working with are successful. Not a problem to be busy, right?
That's right. You got it.
But are they busy with the right stuff? But also you're talking, if we go to the why, instead of getting out of bed in the morning and looking forward to the day, are they doing the opposite why? Why am I doing this? Why do I have to go in? I don't want to do this. I want to,
Yeah, and I guarantee if you cancel 2 hours of meetings every week, you're not going to lose anything. In fact, you're going to gain something if you invest that time in yourself. I've been a busy executive. I know what it's like to have your meeting completely full, and probably about 70% of that is, well, did you read the PowerPoint? Like, just meeting material that doesn't it doesn't get to the point. It's it's something that could probably be having in a conversation. So invest in yourself. Take that time. Just like in financial, pay yourself first. Why don't we do that creatively? Is when it's such a boost, such an opportunity.
So how do you get someone who's really stuck on that treadmill and isn't enjoying things to have the epiphany, to wake up, to get the 2x4 across the forehead, a whack across the head? As I forget the guy who used to do Creative Think conferences a long time ago in Silicon Valley, back in the 80s.
Yeah,
Roger something, I think his name was. But how do you get someone to wake up to that?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do, I think, in the same way that I woke up, is doing something that is counterintuitive. So any Silicon Valley left brain person, like I was completely 10, 15 years ago, you would tell me this, I'd be like, you're cracking smoke. I would just like, no, that's not going to get me from point A to B. It needs a logical step by step. But what I've learned is something outside of the everyday that you're doing, has a way of opening up and making you look at your current situation in a different manner. So one of the things that we do is workshops, and they can be tailored differently. But let's just say a workshop where you're actually doing stand-up. You're writing down what's coming from you internally. I personally think I think a lot of people in business have lost their internal direction. Stand-up requires that you write down how I'm feeling about this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, and then you punch it up. It's all about breaking assumptions. But the first sort of raw material is writing down what you believe, what you think. And so getting people to write down what they think and just having, what do I think about this? Because it's like, no, it's what my VP thinks about it. It's what you think about it that's important. Yeah. Waking them up and actually delivering that on stage, because it's one thing to write it down, and that's important. It's another thing to deliver it. And then it's like, I have an opinion and I'm providing that direction. So there's different exercises that we do. That would be one of those. And it actually wakes people up that just having a direction, you would be amazed that, oh, wow, it felt really good to say what I believed in. It felt really good to have an opinion. It really can have a profound effect. One exercise. Another exercise, we do improv exercises. People actually physically moving, being creative, learning how to get in touch creatively, and be present. And I hope that regarding that, I hope that text, everything's okay.
No, I wasn't looking at the text. I was looking at Redbox to see what the movie I just saw, because it reminded me, what was that movie where the gal was doing the late night show, or she was doing the talk show host? and she was a total jerk. And she hired the Indian gal to come in as a writer only because she told her producer, get a woman on my staff right now. So it doesn't look like your facial expression. You're just like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dave. You're
Good
talking
read.
about a foreign language. But, but it actually, and I forget what it's called. I was trying to find it so I could bring it up. And I thought, oh no, I haven't ever done that on a podcast before. Of course, you don't believe me, but that's okay. Yeah. But this talk show host, of course, she's cold as ice. And they had some nice spins in the script. But it was all about what you're saying is, standing up. And what they were trying to get her to do was, because her ratings sucked, was just be yourself. Talk about what you really feel about. If you need to talk about politics, talk about politics. Talk about whatever you want, but be real.
Yeah.
And you talk about the improv exercises. To me, that sounds like a huge value. To get a group of people, and it sounds like a really bonding thing for a team when you can get some people to do an improv, type of exercise. Can you give us like an example of a group you've worked with? You don't have to give away, what you did or whatever, but I mean, whatever you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, just starting off basic improv, right? So this is as simple as a game, and this is, just kind of entry level, zip, zap, zop. People kind of stand around in a circle, and this is going to sound a lot goofier, but it actually is fun, and it actually loosens you up to the next level. But this is basically...
Come on, it can't be that goofy. Remember, I grew up in Marin County. We were the home of Est, okay? That group that started, and a bunch of other weird stuff that started. So I'm used to all this funny stuff.
And then
it's okay.
Few more vowel acquisitions, you became Estee Lauder. That's impressive.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So basically, you point laser guns at each other, and you say zip as fast as you can, and the person who received the zip has to go zap, and then the other person who received the zap has to go zop, and you just go bang, bang, bang as fast as you can. People, mispronounce, they get it wrong, and they can laugh at themselves because what's funny is when we're in public, when we're standing up, when we're doing a presentation, giving a meeting, it's always so critical on ourselves, isn't it? It's always like, oh, I screwed this up. I'm a horrible person. They're going to think I'm a hack. And once you get over that hump and you're able to laugh at yourself, that's when you can start improving. And so even just that exercise in itself, yeah, you goofed up. Guess what? You're here again and you're back in the group and we're doing it again and we're having fun. Getting people used to that exercise and that rhythm is, it sounds so small, but it's actually can be very profound.
I'm curious, have you ever had it might be the leader or it might be a member of the team that's introverted or cold or highly driven, type A, that just walking on people, but when they go through that exercise, having that person sincerely, truly laugh is like just opens the door to some other people that just felt they couldn't ever approach the person. That ever happened?
Yeah. So not necessarily with that exercise, that kind of like, okay, whatever. And that might be one, they'll kind of go through the motions like zip, like, what are you having gone through stormtrooper training? Come on. Wait.
Yeah.
So one of the other exercises that we do to really get in touch with other people is, what I talked about, writing down what your background is. Like with comedy, you hear a lot of comedians, I was, raised in Utah. No, I'm not Buddhist. I mean, just a little bit about their background. But that's what we do, but it's being extremely authentic. And this one you kind of have to use with caution, but like, yeah, I grew up, people will talk about, I grew up in a situation where it was, our father left us and our mother was an alcoholic. And we literally get to that level where you're being so real with other people. And that's where I've seen that type of transformation that you're talking about, where it's like, wow, somebody has really had that difficult of a life and you kind of develop such an empathy for them. You're like, well, no wonder that person's sort of shut off. They've been living in a foster home since they were, 2 and they had 2 matches to keep them warm, whatever. I mean, that's where you kind of realize that, and that is an amazing bonding and team transformational experience.
Well, that's very interesting because I was expecting you're going to go down a comedy route, but actually that particular exercise opens them up. And it sounds as though you have the team at a stage where somebody most of the time, if not all the time, doesn't say something inappropriate, or try to make it funny when obviously it's someone pouring out their heart about, here's the real deal of my background. Kind of remembers when I did Dale Carnegie, like 35 years ago. It was great. Everybody had to get up in the class for 2 minutes. You had to talk every class.
Yeah. And it's you nailed it in terms of, it isn't just about being funny. And I know I use a lot of comedian concepts, and the book Kaminiology is even just by title. Definitely humor is an easy way to go. But it's what gives us the humor. If you peel back that layer of the onion, and you said it, David, it's about, authenticity and being present and being, comedy comes across as self-deprecating, but in business, I would say it's more self-aware. But these sort of humility, these core ingredients that make us funny and likable on stage are the same ones that make us effective in business, but it might not come across on the surface. It's those, and some of those aren't even funny. Like humility in itself isn't funny, but you can't really, you've seen those comedians who are just, poke you in the eye. Some of them are successful to a degree. Some of them are, but it's typically short-lived relative to like a Robin Williams, very self-deprecating, very like, what do I know? Those are the long-term winning things that, whether it be business or comedy, help us win. And so to get there might not always be a fun and funny exercise, although most of them are, but it's getting to those raw elements, which I think are critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And Robin's a great example. I have a brother who was 6 years my senior, and he was best friends with Robin. So,
oh, wow.
Senior year of high school and then in college, Robin was over a lot. And he was the real deal. He was a super guy, very sincere guy. He had some trouble. He had some wounds from his life experience that, brought down his downfall. But just a super great guy. I won't, take up a lot of time talking about him. But it was a great example that, he was on, where he, would be trying out material. As a matter of fact, my brother lived with him for a while, and it was only like 6 months. He's like, I can't do this, because he walks through the door and he's testing all his material out. But the other side of Robin, and I knew it because he would come and, spend part of Christmas Day with us and, different things for a few years. And he was just also, he had a quiet side to him that was just really sincere and just really caring, super nice, And so that's what I think what's interesting is that your exercises are bringing people out where they feel a little safer, sharing some things or some thoughts, whether it's about themselves or maybe some other thoughts they have, that creates opportunities for them to bond with other people. It's interesting, the comedy, if I'm understanding you correctly, makes them feel that they can be more vulnerable, makes them feel safer. Is that right?
That exactly. You nailed it. And in when we get to an advanced stage, we actually have people do stand up in a performance. And when you talk about being vulnerable, so I'm giving, one of the things I realized when I started doing stand up is that, because I would do it in a course. I did it at San Francisco Comedy College. And so you get up there and people give you feedback like, I didn't like it, wasn't real. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me and how I'm a horrible person or whatever. And that's the same way I felt in business when I had a meeting that didn't go well, or when I had a presentation that was just off. I would take it very personally. One of the things that we do is when people give feedback to people and then they get up there again and they nail it. Or what if we give them a punchline that all of a sudden works and they're like, hey, that was great. Well, over time you realize I am not my material. Right. I feel safe because it's me and my material's over here. I mean, I like the material and I wouldn't have brought it to the stage if I didn't think it was good, but I'm learning through my material, but I'm separate and I can be likable and a constant in terms of this entity. And you can weave in and out of material. And it's really cool when people get that, because then it makes them braver. It makes them feel more comfortable, confident, to your point. So yeah, it is really getting to that, bringing people out.
That's really interesting because we are so programmed by the media and by certain performance-oriented, pressures that we have, that we are, what our bank account is. We are what our job title is. We are what our job performance is. We are the job title. As a matter of fact, in the last 2 weeks, I actually read an email that I was copied on by a friend. And it was a guy who had retired, and I don't know the guy. but as far as I know, he had a successful career, but he was really struggling. I know I wanted to retire, but what do I do now? And it seemed like part of the issue was, his identity was wrapped up in, as you would say, his material,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. We do. We get totally caught up in there. And there's a quote just to kind of highlight that, because I think it's a really good point that you're highlighting. Is there's a quote by Deepak Chopra. Actually, he did this meditation in this group where he says, okay, everybody said I am, and then you say your name, and then you say what you do. So, I'm Bill from accounting, and I'm the FP&A controller. And then all of a sudden he said, okay, well now let's just do I am, and then your name. Okay, so I am Bill. And then he said, okay, now let's just say I am. And you think about that, you're like, wow, that's powerful. You're separating that. Once you're I am, then it's like, well, you can try anything and you can do anything, because you can still go back to being Bill the controller, or you can do something else. But it's that core energy that boy, talk about it. That's the other thing too. You talk about like people needing, I needed like 3 mochas a day just to survive, to get the energy up. But then once I realize I'm me, and I can like, hey, that isn't me, and I've learned, and I can learn, and it's just an energy surge in your day-to-day, what you do. It's pretty amazing.
So you were on a first name basis with your barista at Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly.
They just walked in. Oh, hi. Good to see you, Chris. I'll take it. I'll get it for you. No problem. Just
right.
swipe your phone there,
Yeah, she'd be like, how's life? I'm like, taking forever. Yeah, I mean, I know who it is. But yeah, it's pretty pivotal changes, I think, with looking at yourself. And
so that's interesting. So talk to me about your book, because I'm curious. So you see the title and you think, oh, this is a book that's, going to teach me how to make people laugh or teach me about comedy. And what I'm hearing from you is there's actually a lot more deeper things going on that you're doing. And I'm wondering, how you cover this in the book, because it sounds like it'd be a really interesting read, particularly going into the new year, to kind of think of myself first, right? Leaders got to be role models. But then how could this impact my team?
Yeah, well put. Just send me a bill. That was, yeah, I think, the way that I put it very, very simplistically is you have comedy books that make, they're comedy books that make us laugh, but they don't necessarily have a lot of business value. And there's business books that have a lot of good content, but they're not that entertaining. And so what I've really tried to do with Kaminiology is bring those 2 worlds together. It's a fun business book. And so there's there's several chapters. Each one kind of focuses on like a different sort of concept. So like the first one we talked about is understand your why. Well, the first part of the chapter really talks about my either a story or my experience in comedy, and most times how I felt miserably, and then the lesson that I learned, and then applying that to a business setting. And usually there's a story or a real world story to go along with that to help bring the point home.
And so is this a lot of stuff that when I read the book, I can try it out myself, or, or is it just kind of giving the overview type of thing?
Yeah. I actually got this, to answer that question, I'm going to respond with the story of feedback that I got. So somebody came back and said, hey, I read your book. And he said, he happened to be the corporate manager that was responsible for implementing technology. And so he went down to this site, he traveled to this site, and they said, hey, it wasn't going well. The implementation wasn't going well. And so he said, he was on the way to the site, he was reading Kaminiology. And he said, I tried this because I got there and they said, this implementation isn't going well. It's a lot like the last implementation of this XYZ that was implemented. Now, he happened to be the manager of XYZ, the previous implementation, but he didn't want to tell him that. He said, my previous self would have said, oh yeah, that's horrible. That guy who implemented that, jeez, what a loser, And he said, but this one, he goes, I actually hey, it's me and I'm learning. And he actually told him, he goes, well, I was the manager that rolled out the previous implementation. And they actually embraced him. And he goes, we had a laugh about that. We still laugh. This is a a month about when it happened. He goes, we laugh about it to this day, and it's such a bonding experience. Yes, I muffed it 2 times, but I was honest about it. And I'm still, and I've gotten to be friends with these people. So yes, you actually can try it at home. That maybe not the most success story, but actually I think he's developed a deeper bond, because we all know when you have when you're real with people, when you have that deeper bond, things happen every day. Muck ups happen every day. When you have that authentic relationship, you can go to somebody and say, hey, Dave, I really screwed it up. And you're like, okay, let's understand. Let's work together. It's not this clinical, like, let me understand the ways and how can I take you to court? That's just not what you do when you have that authentic relationship. So yes, definitely.
Well, I think that's really interesting that through the comedy, you're increasing someone's comfort in basically being themselves, and it's opening up. So one of the things we try to do in our Manage to Win practice is trying to get leaders to understand that if they want to get from point A to point B, whatever that is, they got to have a team that is fully engaged. And a key piece of that full engagement is they feel safe to say anything. And it sounds like you've really had some ideas and gone out and proven that your methods, Kaminiology and other things, are helping people feel safe and work closer together. So things aren't hidden. They don't, people aren't making assumptions because old Charlie's, not telling me how he's doing. And it's kind of transforming the workplace when you're going in and work with people.
Yeah, it is. And it's my experience. It's plus it's what's been studied as well. So they did this study where they actually had people watch this video. And so you would watch, actually it was a snippets of videos. Some of them were funny, some of them were serious. And so typical, so at the funny videos, you would laugh. Now, while you were laughing, they actually patched in a video of random people. Now, sometimes the person would laugh with you, sometimes they wouldn't. And then at the end, they gave these people a survey that said, how did you feel about those people? And they said, oh, and undoubtedly, the people that laughed with them, they were the people that they liked. They were people that they wanted to be affiliated with. And the funny thing was, they weren't even actually live people. they were just videos of people who were like laughing at certain intervals. But that doesn't, when we laugh together, there's something that bonds us together. And so, yes, to be able to feel comfortable to tell people, hey, this is what's on my mind, it is an invaluable tool.
Amazing. So I'm curious, how many years have you been doing this now, this type of work?
So I've been, I've been doing stand-up with this type of work. Sorry, I just got up on the question. Stand-up for about 10 years. I've been doing the transformation probably obviously more focused in the past year, but I've been doing change leadership probably in the past maybe 5 to 7 years.
So I'm curious, and I didn't prep you on this, so I may be backing you into a corner, but I doubt it because you're a stand-up comedian. So as you think of 10 years stand-up comedy, and then you think of starting to work on this for 5 years, and then the last year, is there one story you love to tell that's a funny story or endearing story of when you were out teaching this or helping somebody learn it and what happened? Because I think that might be a good way for us to close. I think because I could talk to you for hours about this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty. I was in a workshop telling people how. It's just a funny story. Just telling people how to do stand up. The basics of stand-up, one of the principles that we know. So, and this is just a story that's coming to mind, not necessarily profound learning experience, but just a funny one to leave your listeners with. But we were talking, so comedy is like a horror movie. It's the element of surprise. You think something is going a certain way, and then you break an assumption. For example, you say, my wife ran off with my best friend. I sure am going to miss that dog. So you make a statement and then you break an assumption. And so I said, hey, let's try this in class. And so, the leader was talking about, he was from India, and he said, let's just make a statement. He goes, I'm from India, and I, the only thing I came here, I just came here with $200. That's all I came here with. And I was like, well, you probably should have came here with pants, I think. So, I mean, it was a funny story because it was the leader, to your point about a leader, a really stiff leader and he actually embraced it. And it was so cool to see him embracing, laughing at himself, laughing at the situation. And I'll tell you, the group was like quiet and like they would offer up an idea. It transformed the place. So seeing how leaders react to, looking at themselves, laughing at themselves, making an open workplace, it just a very simple example that had a pretty profound impact.
Awesome. Well, we recommend that our clients do quarterly events with employees, to team bonding events, that type of thing, certainly annual trainings, that type of thing. But how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to do some of this work, or they got a work group that's stuck and they think that your methods might be the solution?
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. So they can contact me directly at ctabish@venturewestgroup.com. I know that's a lot to remember. What might be easier is just to go to Kaminiology.com or venturewestgroup.com, or find me on LinkedIn at Chris Tabish. So, or you can just follow me home. Anyway, sorry. Follow me on Twitter, follow me home. No, yeah, hopefully one of those will work. So love to hear from you and any, help in any way I can.
Oh, this has been great, Chris. Thank you so much for being with us. This is new insights for our people. I'm sure there's some good things there. I encourage everybody to get the book, Kaminiology. It's on Amazon. I saw it. I was about to place my order, but then I was late coming here, so I had to come here. So I got to go back. But anyway, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.